Hey everybody, I'm just putting up the quiz for Things Fall Apart, the final one. I told you guys in class that there's going to be something important on Canvas. Well, here it is. Um, Not only is it the quiz, but I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these questions and maybe how to go about answering them, what what examples might be good. So basically, you got to pick three out of these six questions to answer. And not only that, but you have to give two examples each. There's a little bit of a breakdown of the points, and that's really just about it. Um, we talked about this in class quite a bit, but what does the title Things Fall Apart mean in the context of the story? And what are two examples that demonstrate this? You could talk about on this one, Okonkwo's life falling apart. You could talk about the clan falling apart. You could talk about their way of life. You could talk about Nigeria falling apart. And lots of good examples. Even if you dig earlier into the story, you could talk about Okonkwo's gun exploding and things literally falling apart and killing somebody. You could talk about Okonkwo's plans. He had this great plans for the future that fell apart, and those are kind of talked about throughout the story. Kind of a major theme is the fact that these plans don't come to fruition. For the clan, it's foreshadowed really heavily towards the end about the clan dying, about the clan going away, and that's something you talk about. Discuss one major theme of things fall apart and trace how it evolves or stays the same over the course of the story. There's a lot of good themes we talked about. I would talk a little bit maybe about Unoka and how Okonkwo's fear of his father is one of his driving factors. In fact, if you look down here, where is it? Unoka's here as well, which is kind of an interesting thing that you could do. You could actually answer both these questions pretty similarly. You could talk about the theme of Okonkwo not being able to control himself, or people not being able to control themselves. The theme of cause and effect, the fact that when this happens, this must happen. That's quite a common thing in the story. You could talk about a theme of the cultural war between Christianity and paganism. You could talk about being a good host and why that's important. Lots of different things you could talk about there. I like this one a lot. Evaluate whether it was important or not for Chinua Achebe to keep the tone he uses when writing Things Fall Apart. What message was he trying to get across? Remember, we talked about he has a very neutral tone throughout this work. We talked about the fact that not only is this tone neutral, but he's trying to show really a true depiction of Africa, kind of in the face of things like Heart of Darkness by Conrad and the other books about Africa that were written by white men that show Africa in an unfavorable light. Examples of this would be the fact that he's very neutral when he talks about Okonkwo beating his wives, or the fact that that he's very neutral when he discusses twins being put in these pots and put in the woods. So there's a lot of good things that you could talk about there. Analyze the influence of Unoka in the story. Unoka, I feel like if you really look at him, without him, the story is not possible, because Okonkwo would not be like how he is. And because of that, he wouldn't treat Nwoye the way he treats Nwoye. Nwoye wouldn't go and become a Christian. And it all kind of comes back, the sins of the father, and so on and so forth. It really, you could say that it's all about him. And those are some good examples I gave you. You could look at the beginning and talk about his fear of work and how it makes Okonkwo really determined to succeed. And then probably the hardest question I saved for last was interpret the implicit rules and roles of womanhood in Things Fall Apart, and how are women treated and why is this the case? Use two examples. I would talk about this. I talk about how women are supposed to be two different things. They're supposed to be submissive and they're supposed to be property, but at the same time, they're supposed to be strong and, caregivers. You see that constantly. Okonkwo is getting fed by his wives. He eats like 3 or 4 different meals a day, 3 or 4 meals every mealtime. But at the same time, beyond that, they are treated like cattle by, doling out broomsticks for their price. Then you also have Akwefi, who goes to try to find Chilo, who kidnapped her daughter, and runs through the wilderness to find her in the dark. And Okonkwo comes later, but it's not so much later. So you could talk about how women are supposed to be this property and weak, but at the same time, they're supposed to be very strong, because that's the sort of role that they're thrust into. So anyway, this is the quiz. If you want to pause it, you can just kind of look at it. Maybe look through your notes, or look through the book, or look through Spark Notes, or even look at that crash course video. That wouldn't be a bad idea. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. I hope those of you guys who watch this tell your friends, because remember, if everybody gets a B or above, everybody gets 100 on this quiz. All right. Have a good day.